Last week, Education Secretary Betsy DeVos met both with supporters and detractors of an Obama-era school discipline policy that the Trump administration is considering repealing. Now, while some echoed former President Obama's claim that students received extreme punishments for minor violations and contributed to the so-called school-to-prison pipeline, others were concerned that these policies actually caused officials to overlook violations by students who should have been flagged and weren't. Parkland. It's left many wondering if this policy may have played a role in Parkland this past February. NRATV's Kerry Picket investigated this. She joins us now. Kerry, great work on this. What have you, because I mean, we've talked about the Promise program on this show, but it's not just the Promise program. There are a ton of other programs as well that are now on the chopping block, but particularly with that Promise endeavor, it was, from what I understand, Parkland incubated it, and from there it went national. Tell me what you discovered.
Well, Dana, the Obama-era school discipline reform policy is getting a second look by the Trump administration. And one particular thing that is interesting here is right now we are seeing the violence in schools across the country spike. And we found out that specifically that one particular school district essentially helped craft this school discipline reform policy from the Obama years, and all the other school districts across the country were forced to follow. We spoke to a number of individuals, from teachers to parents to experts, about this, who want the Secretary of Education, Betsy DeVos, to repeal this policy. And here's what they had to say. School violence rocketed across the country because of an Obama-era school discipline policy pushing their criminal justice reform agenda, and many want Secretary of Education Betsy DeVos to repeal the measure. One injured Parkland, Florida student blames a policy that he believes led to his school, Marjory Stoneman Douglas, being the target of a mass shooting last February. This policy, under consideration for repeal, was years in the making by liberal legislation makers after the public became frustrated by zero-tolerance school policies. The response was another story. This was known as, quote, dismantling the school-to-prison pipeline. The effort was part of the criminal justice reform agenda launched by the Obama administration. Between 2011 and 2014, the number of suspensions nationwide fell nearly 20%, the New York-based think tank Manhattan Institute points out. But were the suspensions a result of better behavior from students, or that bad behavior wasn't being reported?
The Obama administration said to schools, even if your rules are totally fair, even if you administer them totally fairly, we might come after you and we're going to make you get those numbers down. The Department of Education, without going through the official regulatory process that it should have, wrote a Dear Colleague letter saying to school districts that if your rules are fair, it doesn't matter. We might come after you and investigate you and maybe take away your money, depending on the rates at which students break these rules.
The author of the policy itself wasn't someone who had a post at the federal level, but at the state level.
Broward County was one of very few major districts that did this without coercion from a federal investigation. They were not under investigation when they made this change. Now, Robert Runcie, the superintendent, used to work for Arne Duncan in Chicago. He got a start in education when Duncan hired him. He had no experience as a principal, no experience as a teacher, and he had actually just been demoted in a staff shakeup. But then this guy with no experience gets tapped to be the leader of the 6th largest school district in America on the virtue of Arne Duncan's recommendation. And then 3 or 4 months before Arne Duncan says all school districts should do this, Broward County comes out in front and says, look at this great thing that we're doing. And of course, they get federal grants for doing this, and there's that incentive. Robert Runcie gets credited.
This is Robert Runcie, the superintendent of the Broward County School District, which includes Marjory Stoneman Douglas High School, the site where 17 students and faculty were killed by alleged gunman Nicholas Cruz last February. According to reports, Cruz was bounced between alternative educational and mental health programs as well as Stoneman Douglas High School. But despite his well-known violent outbursts and threats to the school, no action was taken to prevent him from hurting others.
The model was put up hurdles in front of suspensions, put up hurdles in front of expulsions, put up hurdles in front of arrests, And we're doing this all to fight the school-to-prison pipeline because these disparities are due to teacher bias.
The guidelines restrict disciplinary measures to be used within schools, and it allows children to continue to disobey orders, be disruptive in class, be physically assaulting others, sexually assaulting others.
Annette Albright was a school staffer who was attacked in the hallway by a group of students.
When I put my hands up to ask her to move back, to put some space in between us, she slapped me.
Nicole Landers and her husband Josh began the Parent-to-Parent Network to connect parents and teachers.
We've collected a little over 50 to 60 stories just in the last couple weeks of other families who have had their children assaulted.
Students who commit crimes need to have records, and those records are useful so that if there's a criminal, a psychopathic criminal who tries to buy a gun or who the FBI gets tipped off of, that he can't do that because he has a criminal record. The question is, for one, are your schools doing this? Many, many are, not every, but hundreds of schools serving millions of students have adopted similar policies designed to get the numbers in the reports down.
Unbelievable, Kerry. And of course, as well, because this has spread to other schools, this could be, Kerry, the last really only good chance that we have to repeal this program, correct?
Absolutely, Dana. And keep in mind, the one student that I mentioned at the beginning of that package there was Anthony Borges, and he was shot 5 times. And he has already criticized not just the Broward County Sheriff, but also Robert Runcie. And he's already asked for this particular policy to be repealed. So let's see where that goes.
We will indeed. Kerry Picket, thank you so much for joining us. Appreciate you on this. And of course, don't forget, Kerry also talked to that teacher, that Marjorie Stoneman Douglas teacher, who said the same thing about this Promise program. Kerry, great work. Thank you.